Apple just quietly removed the M4 Mac Mini October 29 announcement video from their official YouTube channel. Strangely, the M4 iMac and M4 MacBook Pro videos are still up, and that's already sparking questions. Is Apple about to replace the M4 Mac Mini with an M5 version as soon as October? Because if that's the case, it would be one of the fastest turnarounds we've ever seen for a Mac Mini update. And that's fascinating because the Mac Mini has always been Apple's sleeper hit. It's not flashy like the iPhone, it doesn't carry the aspirational appeal of a MacBook Pro, and it's not as iconic as the iMac, but for years, it's quietly been one of Apple's most versatile Macs. A desktop that's affordable, customizable to your setup, and powerful enough to handle both everyday computing and heavier workloads if you spec it right. And now, it looks like the next chapter is coming soon, the M5 Mac Mini. Apple insiders Marko Zivkovic recently reported that he's uncovered a device identifier for what appears to be an M5 Mac Mini. Not just that, he also found a separate identifier for a Mac Mini with the M5 Pro chipset. If true, it means Apple's preparing two models once again, just like they did with the M4 and M4 Pro versions. On paper, that sounds obvious. Of course, the next Mac Mini would come with an M5 and M5 Pro. But with Apple, nothing is guaranteed. We've seen Apple completely skip chip generations before. Most recently, the Mac Mini never received the M3 or M3 Pro chips. It went straight from the M2 Pro to the redesigned M4 generation, so the fact that we now have evidence of M5 Minis being tested is actually meaningful. It confirms Apple's keeping the Mini in step with the wider Mac lineup. Now here's where things get interesting, because if you were expecting the M5 to deliver jaw-dropping performance leaps, the reality might be a bit more modest. As reported by MacRumors, respected analyst Minchu Ko says the M5 chipset will use TSMC's new N3P manufacturing method, a more advanced version of the 3nm process used for the M4. In plain English, that means the M5 should be more efficient and slightly faster. But don't expect a revolution. If the performance gains align with what we've seen from previous M-series chips, the upgrade will most likely land in the range of 15-25% of the M4. That's a nice bump, but it's incremental, not transformative. And that does raise the bigger question, is the M5 Mac Mini worth it? Before we get into that, if you enjoy this kind of breakdown of upcoming Apple products, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I've got plenty more coverage coming on the M5 Max, the iPhone 17 series, and more, so subscribing means you won't miss any of that. We're trying to hit 20,000 subscribers right now, so every sub counts. Alright, let's talk honestly. The M5 Mac Mini will be faster than the M4, no doubt about that. But for most people, a 15-25% speed boost isn't going to completely change how you use the computer day to day. If you bought an M4 Mac Mini last year, or even if you're still on the M2 or M2 Pro version, you probably don't need to rush and upgrade the moment the M5 arrives. The gains will be nice to have, especially for people working in fields like 3D rendering or high-res video editing, where every percentage counts. But for everyday usage, web browsing, productivity, coding, even light creative work, you won't suddenly feel like your M4 is slow just because the M5 exists. And that's why I think the most exciting thing about the M5 Mac Mini isn't the chip itself, but what it does to the price of the M4 models. Already we're seeing discounts pop up in the US for the M4 Mac Mini, even though it was only released in October 2024. The base model launched at $599 with 16 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage, which is already an aggressive price for Apple. We've seen it drop to $499 in recent weeks, and now with the M5 on the horizon, those prices are slipping even further. And that's fantastic news for budget-conscious buyers. Because here's the thing, the M4 Mac Mini is not a bad machine. In fact, it's one of the best value Macs Apple's ever sold. It introduced a brand new design, the first since 2010, making the Mini smaller, sleeker, and much more practical with front-facing USB-C ports and Thunderbolt 5 support on the Pro models. It's already powerful enough for most consumers, and now thanks to the upcoming M5, you'll be able to get it for even less. If you're looking for the smartest buy, that's where I'd steer you. Unless you absolutely need the extra speed of the M5, maybe editing 8K video, running simulations, or you just always want the best silicon, I'd say go for the M4 once prices drop further. You'll be getting 90% of the experience for a lot less money. Now that doesn't mean the M5 Mac Mini has nothing to offer. It will still have its audience. Professionals who want the best performance without jumping to a Mac Studio will likely gravitate towards the M5 Pro version. That model could end up offering workstation level performance in a tiny, quiet box that fits neatly on a desk or even tucked away out of sight. But again, that's a very specific audience. For everyone else, the real one here is the price pressure on the M4. Apple tends to not reduce official prices on older Macs after new ones are released, but retailers almost always do, and we're already seeing early signs of that the closer we get to the M5 launch, likely in early 2026 based on the latest reports, the more deals we'll see on the M4. And don't forget, Apple's refurbished section is almost guaranteed to start filling with discounted M4 minis once the M5 is out. Now let's circle back to the bigger picture. Apple redesigned the Mac Mini in 2024, shrinking it significantly and finally adding those front-facing Type-C ports. That was the first proper design change since 2010, a 14-year gap. Because of that, I don't expect Apple to touch the exterior for the M5, it's simply too soon. The design is still fresh, modern, and frankly, still one of the best looking desktops Apple makes. The M5 generation will almost certainly keep the same chassis, the only changes will come under the hood. That means the M5 Mac Mini story is really about the incremental silicon, not a flashy redesign, and that's fine, not every generation has to reinvent the wheel, sometimes the value lies in small refinements that add up over time. The key thing is that the Mac Mini remains an active part of Apple's roadmap and not left to gather dust like it was during the Intel years. Now, Apple isn't just putting the M5 into the Mac Mini, this is part of a broader rollout across the ecosystem, so let's zoom out for a second. The iPad Pro is one of the biggest targets for the M5 chipset. After being updated with an OLED display and a much thinner chassis last year, this year's iPad Pro update will be much smaller in scope. Minchiko has already said M5 powered iPad Pro models will enter mass production in the second half of 2025. That lines up perfectly with Apple's usual 18-month cycle for iPad Pro updates. The current M4 iPad Pro launched in May 2024, so September or October 2025 release makes sense. Beyond the M5 chipset, the only other rumor is two front-facing cameras, one for portrait and one for landscape, but I'm not really sure how useful that would be. And of course, we can't ignore the MacBook Pro. Apple is expected to update the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro with M5, M5 Pro, and M5 Max early next year, though if you're in the market for one, it would actually be smart to skip these, because according to rumors, the MacBook Pro will get its first major redesign since 2021, but not until late next year. The redesign is expected to bring OLED displays, and of course by then Apple will already be onto M6 chipsets. So unless you need a MacBook Pro urgently, waiting could mean you get both a design refresh and a bigger leap in terms of performance. Finally, the iMac. Apple insiders also pointed towards a new identifier for the M5 iMac, which could launch alongside the MacBook Pro and Mac Mini models in early 2026. The current iMac still feels pretty fresh after its colourful redesign, so just like the Mac Mini, don't expect external changes, it will just be about updating the internals. Coming back to the Mac Mini, if you're still weighing out your options, here's my advice. If you absolutely need the extra performance, get the M5 when it launches. You get a little more speed, better efficiency, and potentially longer software support, but if you care about value, and let's be honest, most Mac Mini buyers do, the M4 is about to become the deal of the decade. With discounts already happening in the US and even in the UK where I'm based, where it's dipped around $499, and I'll leave links below to that, the M4 is already one of the best bang for buck Macs Apple's ever made, and that will continue being the case when the M5 models launch. So to wrap this up, the M5 Mac Mini is coming, with both M5 and M5 Pro chips. Performance gains will be modest, 15 to 25% at most, thanks to TSMC's M3P process. No design changes are expected since Apple's just refreshed the Mini in 2024. The biggest benefit of the M5 might actually be what it does to the M4's price, which is already falling. So my advice, once again, don't buy the M5 unless you absolutely want the extra performance. Otherwise, wait for M4 deals because that's where the real value lies. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments, would you pay extra for the M5, or would you rather save money on the M4 once prices drop? And of course, if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to subscribe for more coverage of Apple's M5 Max, iPhone 17 news, and everything else Apple's planned for the next year.